Narrator with intensity. Deep in the heart of the Argonne forest, in the chaos of World War I, one man stood against impossible odds. A humble farmer from Tennessee, who swore he'd never take a life, became the unlikeliest of heroes. His name was Alvin York. On October 8, 1918, armed with nothing but a rifle, a pistol, and unshakable resolve, he single-handedly silenced 35 German machine guns, killed 25 enemy soldiers, and captured 132 prisoners in a feat so daring it sounds like a Hollywood blockbuster. But this isn't fiction, it's history. This is the story of how a reluctant warrior changed the course of a battle and etched his name into legend. So, grab a seat, hit that subscribe button, and let's step back in time to uncover the incredible life of Sergeant Alvin York. Transition. In the late 19th century, the hills of Pall Mall, Tennessee, were about as far from the battlefields of Europe as you could get. Born on December 13, 1887, Alvin Cullum York was the third of 11 children in a dirt-poor farming family. Life in the Fentress County backwoods was grueling. The Yorks lived off the land, hunting, fishing, and farming to survive. Young Alvin learned to shoot a rifle before he could read properly, his keen eye making him a natural marksman. By his teens, he could hit a squirrel from 100 yards, a skill honed in the dense forests where missing a shot meant going hungry. Narrator with a reflective tone. But Alvin wasn't just a sharpshooter, he was a scrapper. As a young man, he was no stranger to trouble. Picture this. A strapping, red-haired Tennessean, quick with his fists, known for drinking moonshine, gambling in smoky saloons, and raising hell on Saturday nights. The locals called him a wild one, a man who lived. Narrator. In 1914, Europe descended into chaos. The Great War, later called World War I, pitted nations against each other in a brutal struggle for power. Trenches stretched across the continent, and millions perished in the mud and blood. By 1917, the United States could no longer remain neutral. President Woodrow Wilson declared war on Germany, and the draft began, calling up men from every corner of America, including Pall Mall, Tennessee. Narrator with gravitas. When Alvin York received his draft notice in June 1917, he was 30 years old. For a man who'd sworn off violence, this was a crisis of conscience. His church taught that killing was a sin, and Alvin believed it with every fiber of his being. He filled out his draft card, writing in bold letters, "Don't want to fight." He applied for conscientious objector status, appealing twice to be excused from military service. But the draft board wasn't swayed. The army needed men, and Alvin's reputation as a sharpshooter made him too valuable to let go. His appeals were denied, and in November 1917, he reported for duty at Camp Gordon, Georgia, as part of the 82nd Division, the All-American Division. Narrator with empathy. Imagine the turmoil in Alvin's heart. Here was a man who'd found peace in his faith, now forced to pick up a rifle and march toward war. At Camp Gordon, he trained rigorously, marching, shooting, and learning the art of soldiering. But he couldn't shake his doubts. He confided in his commanding officer, Captain Edward Danforth, and his battalion commander, Major George Buxton, both devout Christians. They sat him down, quoted scripture, and argued that sometimes, to protect the innocent and stop evil, a man must fight. They pointed to passages like Ecclesiastes 3 verse 3, "A time to kill and a time to heal." Slowly, painfully, Alvin began to see his duty differently. He decided that if God had placed him in this war, he would serve with honor, trusting his faith to guide him. By October 1918, the war was nearing its climax. The Allies launched the Meuse-Argonne Offensive, a massive push to break the German lines in northern France. It was the largest American operation of the war, involving over 1 million men. The Argonne forest was a nightmare of mud, barbed wire, and machine gun nests. The Germans had fortified their positions, and every hill was a fortress. Alvin's unit, Company G of the 328th Infantry Regiment, was tasked with capturing Hill 223, a key position blocking the Allied advance. Narrator building tension. On the morning of October 8, 1918, at 6:10 a.m., the attack began. A thick fog blanketed the forest, muffling the roar of artillery and the chatter of machine guns. Alvin and his squad, led by Sergeant Bernard Early, moved forward under a hail of bullets. Their mission: flank the German lines and take out the machine gun nests pinning down American troops. 17 men, including Alvin, crept through the underbrush, their boots sinking into the mud, their hearts pounding. Narrator dramatic pause. For a moment it seemed they'd succeeded. They surprised a German headquarters, capturing a group of prisoners without firing a shot. But then, everything went wrong. From a ridge above, hidden German machine guns opened fire. The air exploded with bullets. 6 Americans fell dead, their bodies crumpling into the mud. 3 more, including Sergeant Early, were wounded, screaming in agony. The squad was pinned down, outgunned, and outnumbered. Only 8 men remained, and the Germans were closing in. Narrator with intensity. In that moment of chaos, Alvin York took charge. At 30 years old, with no formal leadership training, he became the leader his men needed. He ordered his 7 surviving comrades to guard the prisoners and stay low. Then, alone, he crawled forward, his rifle slung over his shoulder, his eyes scanning the ridge. The Germans didn't know it yet, but they were about to face a one-man army. But the danger wasn't over. As Alvin marched his prisoners back to American lines, German snipers and machine gunners, unaware of the surrender, opened fire. Alvin and his men had to navigate a gauntlet of bullets, keeping 132 prisoners in line while staying alive. At one point, a German officer tried to signal his comrades to attack, but Alvin was watching. He pressed his pistol to the officer's back and growled, "One wrong move, and you're done." The officer froze, and the prisoners kept marching. Through sheer grit and determination, Alvin delivered all 132 Germans to the American lines, a feat that left his commanders speechless. Chapter 5: A Hero's Recognition. Narrator triumphant tone. When Alvin York returned to his unit with 132 German prisoners in tow, his commanding officers could hardly believe their eyes. The official report stated that Alvin had personally killed about 25 enemy soldiers and silenced 35 machine gun nests, clearing the way for the American advance on Hill 223. Word of his actions spread like wildfire through the ranks, then across the Atlantic. The quiet farm boy from Tennessee was now a national hero. Narrator with pride. In 1919, Alvin was promoted to sergeant and awarded the Medal of Honor, America's highest military decoration. The citation read, "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty in action with the enemy." But that wasn't all. France honored him with the Croix de Guerre, Italy gave him the Croce al Merito di Guerra, and Montenegro awarded him its War Medal. When he returned to New York City in May 1919, the streets erupted in a ticker-tape parade. Crowds cheered, flags waved, and newspapers hailed him as the hero of. But fame didn't change Alvin York. Hollywood producers and advertisers came calling, offering fortunes to tell his story or endorse products. He turned them down flat, saying, "This uniform ain't for sale." Instead, he went back to Pall Mall, married his childhood sweetheart, Gracie Williams, and settled into a quiet life. With his war bonuses, he built schools and roads for his community, founding the York Institute to give rural kids an education he never had. He wanted to leave a legacy not of war, but of hope. Narrator with a nod to history. In 1941, with World War II looming, Alvin finally allowed his story to be told in the film Sergeant York, starring Gary Cooper. The movie was a smash hit, earning 2 Oscars and inspiring a new generation of soldiers. Alvin used the film's proceeds to fund more schools and charities. He passed away in 1964 at the age of 76, but his story remains a beacon of courage, faith, and humility. The legacy of Alvin York. Narrator inspirational tone. Alvin York's story isn't just about one day in the Argonne forest. It's about a man who wrestled with his conscience, faced impossible odds, and rose to meet the moment. He wasn't born a hero. He became one through grit, faith, and an unyielding sense of duty. From the backwoods of Tennessee to the battlefields of France, Alvin York showed the world what one person can do when they stand up for what's right. If this story moved you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs a dose of inspiration. Subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into history's greatest stories. Drop a comment below. What would you have done in Alvin's shoes? Could you face 35 machine guns and come out on top? Let's start a conversation.